name's Geoff Kersey. I've always liked old barns and rustic farm buildings as subjects for paintings, so when I came across this one on a recent visit to Ashford-in-the-Water in Derbyshire, I knew straight away it would make a good composition. I did a quick sketch to get a feel for the subject and I took a few photographs. So now I've transferred this onto a stretched sheet of £140 rough paper and I've put some masking fluid on the areas that I want to make sure I've still got nice clean paper later on. So to start, I'm going to take the large number 16 brush and take some cobalt blue with a little rose madder just to warm it slightly. Then I'm going to make a grey colour, starting with the same two ingredients, cobalt blue and rose madder, and just a hint of burnt sienna to make it into a warm grey. Now before I paint the sky, I want to have some colours ready to drop in some soft shapes, wet into wet, to suggest some trees behind the barn and to the right hand side of it. So I'm going to take some cobalt blue and rose madder again, but this time thicker, more pigment in it. Then I'm going to take a bit of raw sienna and burnt sienna, that sort of warm orangey brown colour, and a little bit of darker brown, burnt sienna, cobalt blue. To keep that warmth in it, I'm adding a little bit of rose madder as well. Okay, so I'm going to start now by taking a 1-inch flat brush and wetting the whole of the sky area, just sweeping across. Because I've put masking fluid on the big tree on the left, I don't have to paint around the branches, I don't have to worry about that. And also because I've got it on the roofs of the barn, I don't have to worry about that either. I can just paint right the way up to it with a big brush, getting that background nice and evenly wet. And with the 16, I always find round brushes better for painting skies than flats. I'm going to bring in this cobalt blue with a touch of rose madder from the top, leaving a few glimpses of white as I get lower down, to suggest a bit of cloud, especially behind the tree branches there. And then to suggest a bit of cloud shadow, I'm using that grey mixture and dropping a bit of that in. And maybe in the lower part of the sky, into the areas actually where I've left a bit of white. Now that will need a few moments, not to fully dry, but to just get a little bit drier. Well, now that the shine's just started to go off the paper, I'm going to take that purple mixture of cobalt blue and rose madder and drop a little bit of that in, starting here behind the gate. And then straight away drop in some of the raw sienna and burnt sienna. Bit more of the purple on top. So we start to introduce a touch of warmth as well. Bit for these trees behind here. Same thing, I've dropped some of that purpley colour in, and then I'm dropping a little touch of the raw sienna and burnt sienna. Bit of that grey as well from the cloud shadows, that's a nice tone as well. Really, I'm getting a bit of tone, a bit of colour behind the barns so that I can have the light reflecting on the roof later on with a bit of contrast behind it. A repeat of this now over at the left hand side. Just before they dry, I'm going back in with that darker brown mixed from burnt sienna, cobalt blue and a little touch of rose madder. And that's bringing the colour and tone darkest right behind the rooftops of the buildings. And that just needs a little time to dry. So now that the background's dry, I'm just getting a thin wash of raw sienna and burnt sienna, quite watery this. And with the side of the number 12 brush, we'll put a shape in for these trees behind the barn, for the very tops of them. And for the branches from this big tree as well, this colour will be fine for that. Just dragging the brush across the surface, making sure not to overdo it. Still got to be able to see plenty of blue sky between the branches. Now before I paint any branch detail into that, I'll have to wait for it to dry. Now there's a couple of old trees behind the barn that are covered in ivy, And it's a slightly different technique to paint these, but I'll mix some colour first. I've taken a number 4 brush and I'm going to mix a rich dark green with Oriolin, ultramarine. And this has got to be quite a stiff mixture, not much water in it, nearly all pigment. Oriolin, ultramarine and burnt sienna. And then using the brush on its side, I'm going to take advantage of the texture of the paper to get that rough broken effect you get when a tree is clad in ivy. And we'll do a few of them. Now continuing that effect now with the same paint but a smaller brush. And this is the number 2 brush, and I'm just using it fairly dry now to sort of start some branches off. And as the brush gets drier, the less paint it deposits, the more subtle the effect becomes. I can use the very tip of it now to start a few branches off. Mix now some burnt sienna and ultramarine, a rich dark brown, to carry on painting these branches right up into the shapes I created earlier on with the thin wash. Keeping very fine marks. Winter trees like this are far more effective if you can get the branches really fine. Just to finish these off, I'm picking up a bit of neat lemon yellow. I'm just going to use this in the same dry brush technique to just catch a bit of foliage, just catching the light on the right hand side. Now I need quite a few colours for the stone walls of the barn. Rather than just see them as a cool grey, I'm going to try and add a bit of life into them. So starting with a bit of raw sienna and burnt sienna, then a nice pinky colour with some Naples yellow. That's quite opaque, so I want plenty of water with it. And I'm adding to that a touch of burnt sienna. Okay, now we'll have a little bit of purple in it. I'm going to take some cobalt blue and add some rose madder to it. And I think just a hint of green. You always get bits of moss and lichen and growth on the walls, and I'm just going to take some Oriolin with a touch of cobalt blue and a bit of raw sienna. And then with the number 12 brush, I'm going to start putting this colour on over the whole of the wall areas, but for the time being I'm not putting anything on the roofs. Leaving the doorways out, they'll be painted with different colours. You need to put plenty of paint on at this stage so that you get an opportunity to add some extra colours in before it dries. Don't want to paint a neat line where it meets the ground because there's grass growing around it and it's not that tidy. I might as well put a bit of colour in for that wall while I've got it on the brush. Now the Naples yellow with a touch of burnt sienna. And that touch of purple, a little bit of that, that's a nice bit of warmth almost. And I'm going to put a bit of brown in round the bottom, some burnt sienna and cobalt blue. I can drop a bit into that wall across there. And then, while it's still wet, that hint of green for a little bit of lichen and moss on the wall. But concentrating the stronger colour nearer to the bottom.